clarity, accountability, compassion. These are more than buzzwords, and they are more connected to each other than you might realize. If you want to build your team, transform relationships, work, and the lives of your team members, you're in the right place. Welcome to another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast, where we are helping leaders grow personally and professionally to lead more effectively and make a bigger difference for their teams, organizations, and the world. If you're listening to this podcast, you could be with us live for future episodes and therefore hear this great content and be engaged and informed sooner. And you can learn how to do that by joining our Facebook or LinkedIn groups. Just go to remarkablepodcast.com/Facebook or remarkablepodcast.com/LinkedIn. Today's episode is brought to you by our new book, The Long Distance Team, Designing a Team for Everyone's Success. You can learn more, get your copy, and even get a bit of a preview by going to longdistanceteambook.com. And with that out of the way, I'm going to bring our guest in so you can, if you're watching, you can see him. And then I am going to officially introduce him, and then we'll get going. Our guest today is Marc Lesser. He is a CEO, executive coach, and Zen teacher with over 25 years of experience supporting leaders in reaching their full potential in business and life. He is widely known for developing the Search Inside Yourself program within Google, a mindfulness-based emotional intelligence training for leaders that has been taught to thousands of executives worldwide. He also founded and served as CEO of the Search Inside Yourself Leadership Institute. He is currently the CEO of ZBA Associates, an executive development and leadership consulting company that supports leading companies including Genentech, Google, and Beneficial State Bank. He also leads a weekly meditation group, Mill Valley Zen, which focuses on Zen teaching and practice. He's here specifically today because of his new book. He is the author of several books, but his newest book, Finding Clarity: How Compassionate Accountability Builds Vibrant Relationships, Thriving Workplaces, and Meaningful Lives. It's set to release next week as we are here together live. He is also the host of the popular podcast Zen Bones, Ancient Wisdom for Modern Times. Marc?
Kevin, it's a
Welcome,
pleasure to hang out with you.
It's my pleasure to have you. So Mill Valley tells us where you're, at least it tells me where you're located because I used to live in the Bay Area. So you live in the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm so glad that you're joining me here today in Indianapolis and with people from around the world, including, let's see, we have Idaho Falls and we have Avon, Ohio, and we have Long Island and Washington, D.C. And as of right now, Vernon, BC, Canada. Hi, Danny. So we're glad that they're all here. And Marc, I'm glad that you're here. So let's just start here. It's a place I like to start a lot of times. You have a long and interesting journey that leads you to this point. So let's just start there. What leads you to this point? What leads you to us having this conversation and this book, and what led you here?
Yeah, key points. I always tend to start with, I'm a New Jersey boy at heart. I was attending Rutgers, and I took a 1-year leave of absence, which came out to the West Coast, and that 1 year turned into 10 years of living.
You say you really never went home.
Well, actually, I did. 10 years later, I did go back. Right. So as you can imagine, my parents not thrilled by this 1-year leave of absence turning into 10 years at the Zen Center. I did go back. And in fact, I was inspired about leadership while, running a Zen monastery kitchen and then later a Zen monastery, and went back, finished my degree and got an MBA degree. And I've been in the business world since, integrating, these two, what looks like two separate things, right? The, awareness practice, mindfulness practice, meditation practice, which to me, it's all human. It's like how to be a full, thriving human being. And finally, the world has caught up with this crazy notion that instead of somehow extricating or getting rid of humanity in the business world, there's now an understanding that actually we need we need humanity for things like creativity, for collaboration, for solving real problems. So, my parents, well, if they were still alive, they'd be proud of me. They could relax again, and
He did.
turned out
He
turned out
he
to
turned out
turned out to
okay.
be turned out to
Um,
be good for business. Studying, it was I got the call one day, from Google. Hey, how would you like to come help create a mindful leadership program inside of Google? It was like, okay, that sounds like fun. And
I
that
can
really
imagine it was.
that changed my life in a lot of ways. I That was where I feel like I really got to practice and see my love of teaching. And I've always loved, growing businesses and one-on-one coaching, but I had not really been up in front of the room, and that was great testing, being up in front of Google engineers asking me questions about
It
science and meditation. So that
I
was great.
indeed. In about 2007, or at least the book came out in 2007, I wrote a line, Mark, that said something along these lines. At least this is what I remember that I wrote, that to be a better leader, is to become a better human, and vice versa. And when I read the book and I listen to you now, that line resonates
Mhm.
with me, and I think it probably does with you as well. So early in the book, you make a statement and you sort of say, this is what the book is about. And it really ties together the three things, the three ideas that I put forth in the intro before I introduced you. And you said in the book, the art and practice of finding clarity through compassionate accountability, that's what you were trying to do. So you put those three words together, and obviously we're going to talk as we go, but I'd like you to sort of unpack that line, the art, and I'll put it on the screen, the art and practice of finding clarity through compassionate accountability. What does that mean, Mark?
Yeah. Yeah, the original title for this book and what I was really writing about was accountability, and I've been really drawn to that. And accountability has sort of a bad reputation. I
I call
think
it the longest four-letter word in the English language.
yeah, exactly, exactly. And so we decided, no, that can't be the title because people really don't like it, and it's too long a word, and compassion, and the business world isn't quite really ready to embrace compassion yet. Um, but I was walking with a friend, and they said, "What is this book really about?" And I blurted out, "It's really about finding clarity. It's really about being more clear." And accountability is really about being more clear with ourselves, but really with others, aligning with others. And this is such a, we humans have, um, we're emotional beings, and we're storytellers. And it is not easy to have our emotional lives and our stories line up. And this is so core in the work world about what does success look like, right? What does success look like? And in what way are we aligned about that? Like, what are we trying to achieve, as well as how are we trying to achieve it? And, uh, and so much of our business life, I think, is the work around that kind of alignment, that kind of accountability. And to me, the accountability by itself can be rather cold or even cruel, off-putting. So it needs the care piece, the compassion piece. And to me, this is the, kind of thrilling and important part about being a leader, being, in the world that integrates kind of real accountability, which is, honesty, and in order to do that, you have to be more clear. You have to see with more clarity. You have to be able to step back and see what your own stories are, see what other people's stories are, without being totally uh, filled with fear and stress and anxiety and difficult emotions. You have to be able to work with those emotions in order to see more clearly.
Yeah, I mean, on a very pragmatic level, if you're my boss, if you're my leader, and I'm not clear about what you want or need from me, it's really impossible for me to be accountable for those things, 'cause I don't know what I'm being accountable for.
Yeah.
And so, we can hook them together in that regard. What else, from the perspective of the team member, is gained by doing the kinds of things you're talking about and that we're going to unpack during this conversation? Like, how does the team or the individual team member benefit as
Yeah.
we get better at this as a leader?
Well, I mean, it's such a relief to have a clear sense of what success looks like, right? I mean, it is amazing how how many teams and companies don't have those conversations. And it's not like you can just have them once, because things are constantly changing. And what success looks like today might be very different in a week or two from now. So we need to be updating. We need to be checking in. I there's a sub chapter called the four most important words, which are, how are we doing? And uh, and in the book, I tell a story about a conversation I have with my grown daughter, in which I knew there had been a bit of an upset, a bit of a miscommunication that caused some gaps in my relationship with my daughter, who I had been incredibly close with, and and we needed to have that "how are we doing" conversation, and it was a beautiful thing. It wasn't easy, I got to hear things that were still bothering her, and we got, it wasn't like we worked everything out, but somehow just having that conversation. And I find in the work world that how are we doing? What can I do? What can I do to help our working relationship be more effective? These are not, this means, there's a certain kind of vulnerability in even asking that question, and being able to ask it in a way where you actually are open to hearing the answer. Again,
Well, that's key, right? Because I think, when we think about the leader and team member relationship, there's a power differential, right?
That's right.
Because of our position.
Right.
And I was thinking about that as you were talking about with your daughter. As a parent, there's a power differential, right? As well,
Mhm.
there should be at some level. And so the fact that you were willing to ask the question, the fact that you were willing to go first. I think as leaders, sometimes we sort of say, well, they can ask us whatever they want. That people can bring stuff to us.
Mhm.
Well, it's not as simple as that. There's all sorts of reasons why they may not want to, including what we will infer about them as a result, and 100 other things. And so, as a leader, if we're willing to go first
Mhm.
to do that, it
Yeah.
changes everything. You want
Yeah.
to add to that or comment on that, Mark?
I remember when I started my last organization, and I had my first hire, and like the two of us were kind of jump starting this company. And at some point during one of our conversations, I turned to him and said, "I'm really interested. Tell me the ways I frustrate you." And he, at first, it's like, that's a hard question to hear from your boss. You don't expect that question from your boss.
And you're
Um,
not sure how you should answer it.
it's true, but I had to say, we humans, there's always ways we can do things better. There's always, maybe let's deal with the little things now before they turn into the big things. I like to have what I call with my team members, the no festering rule. Like, let's agree that, something I do hurts you, bugs you, surprise. Like, let's talk about it. Let's work it out. Do not go home and moan to me, moan to your wife about what a horrible boss you have. Come tell me.
Because she can't fix it.
I'm not perfect. I'm not perfect. I'm not perfect. And so there's a kind of, uh, this practice. It's easy to say, right? Confidence and humility. Like, as leaders, we need to be confident, right? We need to show up as though we know what we're doing. we have a clear vision. We're strong. We're decisive. I get it. And these are important attributes, but we also need to be humble. We need to, yeah, it's interesting. You talked about there are the power differentials. Of course, there are, but I've noticed, like, as a leader, the people we work for have an awful lot of power too. I depend on those people for my success. If we're not
Yeah,
successful, I know that I'm not going to be around here long. Uh,
exactly. No,
and
that's
and
so
I
right.
depend. I so we're it's yes, there
It's an
are
interdependent relationship for sure, right? Um,
totally.
for sure. You just said something. I'm going to underline it verbally for everyone because everybody, if this is the only thing, which it isn't, but if this is the only thing you get from this podcast, it was worth it all to hear the idea of the no festering rule. If
Mhm,
people would apply the no festering rule, not only will we become better leaders and we'll have better relationships, but the amount of conflict that will take uh, uncomfortable and destructive conflict that will take
mhm,
place in our organization will be virtually eliminated
mhm,
because it
mhm,
all starts
mhm,
little. It
mhm.
almost all starts little, right?
Yeah, yeah,
I love
yeah,
that.
yeah. But this Kevin is, we can get into the various parts of, like, it takes ongoing self-awareness practices in order, again, uh you know things can come up, little things can come up right away that can become really difficult to work with, because they touch on our own place. So there's places within all of us, I believe, that could use work, could use more clarity, right?
Sure.
We are fairly, we're pretty complicated creatures, we humans. And I think recognizing that and working with that, some clarity, I think, also involves having a good sense of humor to be able to laugh at ourselves is, I believe, a form of enlightenment.
Well, that helps us with that humility piece, right? So you're sort of leaning into something that I was hoping we would get to a little bit. One of the chapters in the book is about our story, and there's a lot that you talk about there, and we've both hinted at it a little bit. But talk about that. You know, we as humans, as leaders, have a story. What do you mean by that? And what do we need to do with that, if you
Yeah.
would?
Yeah, I think, generally we get very entrenched or tied into, again, whether it's, my story of, am I successful, or am I, less than successful? Am I a failure? I think a great exercise I often have executives do is spend 5 minutes writing about just what a complete and utter failure you are, all of the things that you've done wrong, all of the mistakes you've made. Go there, and now do the same exact thing to tell me about your successes and everything that you've done well and done great. And and we can all do that, and we don't need to, know we're all, we all are blends of those, and those are stories, in some way. From another perspective, those stories really don't matter. I'm an okay, loving, you know, confident and humble human being, filled with my successes and failures, not defined my success. Am I an introvert or an extrovert? Well, I'm an introvert that loves speaking in front of large crowds. Like, what? I'm a meditation mindfulness teacher that loves growing businesses. you know these, I think, to be able to recognize and embrace and play with our different stories, and the stories that we're telling about others as well, is a important practice.
How I just want to dive in that a little bit further. I agree with everything that you just said. How does that? How does self awareness connect to the stories that we have about ourselves?
Yeah, yeah. So self-awareness, I think, is the key. It's the leverage point that allows us to not be entrenched or caught by those stories, right? Um, and it's interesting, I've the program that I created at Google was, you know, we called it, mindfulness based, emotional intelligence, right? So, uh, emotional intelligence, the core competency of emotional intelligence is self awareness, and we were, and this is a lot of what I feel like I do in my work with executives now is it takes more of a somatic practice, a bodily practice, and this is where I think the mindfulness or meditation comes in because you can't think yourself into self-awareness. It's more it's the thought process, the cognitive parts are important, are essential, but there is a deeper somatic part to self-awareness, and you know it was Daniel Goleman, who really made emotional intelligence, kind of got it out there in the made it popular. And
Mhm.
I got to ask him. I brought him in as a guest teacher to some of the things I was doing, and I asked why he didn't include meditation and mindfulness in his original book, and he said because the world wasn't ready for it. But
Yeah.
he said
He still
now
has to
that's
sell
changed.
books,
That's
right?
changed.
I mean, I don't mean I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah,
being crass
yeah.
by that. I mean, I think it's I think that's right on. There's a couple of things, you know, I could do what maybe other podcasters are going to do in conversing with you, Mark, and sort of dive into pieces of the specific chapters, which we could certainly do. But there's a couple of lines that you say that I want to do instead. So I'm just going to read a line that you wrote, and I just want you to expand on that for a minute. One of the things you say is you say that we need to start by stopping. What does that mean?
Yeah, that it's easy, really easy to get caught up in the river of busyness. In fact, busyness and it's become a religion, something that we get proud of. I remember coming onto a call and someone saying, "Mark, are you as busy as we are?" And I stopped and said, I'm not. I'm much more interested in being engaged and even spacious rather than busy. And in order to be engaged and in order to be spacious, it often takes stopping, actually stopping. Again, I'm a I think at some point, and it's starting to happen, that meditation and mindfulness will be a required program in every MBA school, in every leadership program. And it's actually, I think, training oneself to stop and to be able to not be caught by our stories, to not be caught by what we are expecting, or to just to create a little bit of space. So that's what I mean by start by stopping. The and it again, I think it takes some training. It doesn't come, maybe it comes naturally to us when we're born, but right away we are all inducted into the world of busyness and one thing after another, especially the work world and the world of leadership. um, there's something about, even right in the midst of a intense work day, being able to check in with your energy, check in with your state of mind. Again, it's literally like stopping, taking a breath. How am I doing?
Yeah. One of the things when I lead, well, everyone when they go to a workshop, like face to face, old school workshop, people expect there's going to be a break, right? And a lot of times, middle of the day, middle of the morning, I like to do it more frequently than that for a variety of reasons. That being one. But when we do a 2 hour webinar, interactive session virtually, we always have a break in the middle, and I think a lot of people are like, "We're gonna break." Also,
Yeah.
like, yeah, you go to the bathroom, but you can also get a glass of water, and you can also stand up and walk away from that, monitor for a minute and stop.
Hmm.
We'll get done, and we'll
Yeah.
be better for you having this 3 or 4 or 5, 6 minutes in our case,
Yeah.
almost always 7 minutes to sort of, to your point, take a breath.
One of the practices that we introduced at Google that became part of their meeting culture was starting meetings with 30 seconds of silence. Like, what a radical idea. Just, just, you know, being quiet together, just taking a breath. Again, I'm sure that at some point there's probably research. I haven't seen research on this, but I'm sure research will show. My experience was that meetings go better. Meetings just go better, bringing in a little bit of silence, often a little bit of the personal element, like actually checking in with these humans before then engaging in the work of whatever we're doing of you know productivity and problem solving.
Well, your forward question that you mentioned earlier, of how are we doing, is a fabulous question to use in a one-on-one. It's a fabulous question to use at the start of a meeting, depending on the nature of the meeting, because it helps us recenter, and it helps us refocus, and it helps us kind of reset as
Mhm,
well.
mhm,
I think that's
mhm.
very true. And I'm very confident that you and I could have a very long and fruitful conversation, but not everyone wants to be there for all of that. I am talking with Marc Lesser, the author of the new book, and I don't even have the actual book. I have the fancy uncorrected galley.
I saw.
Finding Clarity: How Passionate Accountability Builds Vibrant Relationships, Thriving Workplaces, and Meaningful Lives. And clearly, everybody, we haven't gotten through nearly everything in the book, but it's my hope that you're getting a pretty good sense of who the author is, and what he brings to the table for you. And I hope that that's in itself of great value to you. I think one more before we shift gears and kind of move into where I like to close these, Mark, and that is another phrase that you say in the book that I would love for you to unpack, and it is this: change happens quickly and gradually.
Yeah. Um, well, I think we all can, experience that. I think the an example that comes up to me is s- s- uh, suddenly we find that we have smartphones like that. The world changed, uh, but then little by little, how we relate to these things changes. But in the realm of self-awareness, I think it is we things happen and we can have some aha and insight that happens quickly and surprisingly fast. And at the same time, I think real change, real self-awareness is an ongoing day by day practice that we almost don't even notice it. There's a phrase that's sometimes used to describe the practice of building self-awareness. It's like walking in a light fog that you barely feel it, but eventually you find that you're wet.
Yeah.
uh, and I think to me it's a both a motivation to look for those fast and easy wins and changes, and it's also motivation to be patient and realize that real change happens slowly over time, and you might not even notice it. People sometimes say, well, Mark, you've had a lifetime of meditation practice. How are you different? Like I don't notice it so much. Probably a wasted time, really. All these, you know.
I
Yeah.
highly doubt that.
but
Um,
but I do. But I do. The people around me, they're like, no, no, you used to be really different.
they didn't even say better or worse. They just said
Well,
different.
yeah, I was going to say you used to be a jerk. No, but I had to edit myself a little bit there.
Um, so I do want to shift gears for a couple minutes before we finish, Mark. And the question that I like to ask people, one of the questions I like to ask people is, like, what do you do for fun? Like, people that are here, like you, that join me, not like you, but other guests that I have, uh, are clearly passionate about their work. They clearly strive to understand and be wise and to share what they've learned, and they're passionate about that. But it's interesting to know more about you in terms of, like, what do you do for fun when you aren't helping people find clarity, for example?
I feel really lucky in this way in that there are a lot of things I could name. I love to cook and bake. I'm a trained bread baker. Um, for fun, I made a batch. I surprised a bunch of people and made cinnamon rolls from scratch, and they were good. They were really good.
I'll
uh,
send my address, because that happens to be one of my favorites. I can tell you stories. Uh, Homemade cinnamon rolls. I
Homemade cinnamon rolls. Yeah,
love
yeah, yeah,
that.
yeah. And
Um,
I'll also share. I'm also a sports addict. People are often surprised. Um, uh,
Favorite
I'm
sport to watch?
To watch? Oh man, it depends on the season. Right now, it's the Warriors in basketball, but I'm a big 49ers fan. I also love watching golf and tennis, and I grew up on golf courses, and I'm back playing again after a long hiatus.
So, plenty of things that you do for pleasure, and I'm confident of this. Although we didn't have much time in our sort of pre-conversation before we went live, I'm also confident that you're a reader. So, what's something that you've read recently? And we can see over your shoulder a few things there. But like, what are you reading now, or what's something, Mark, that you've read recently that people might be interested in knowing about?
I've really enjoyed Think Again by Adam Grant in the business realm. Um, I'm also rereading *Sapiens* by Yuval Noah Harari, and I'm rereading a really wonderful history book called *These Truths* by Jill Lepore. Fantastic writer and fantastic education. I feel like I'm getting educated on U.S. history.
These truths.
These truths.
Sapiens, which has been brought to our attention here on the
Yeah.
show before. I'm sure that doesn't surprise you. And Think Again. I don't know if that book by Adam has been on, but I know others have. We'll have links to all those, everybody, in the show notes. If you're watching us live, you can go find them yourself. And of course, you're going to want to get a copy of Finding Clarity. Let me put that right there on the screen. Where can people get the book? Where do you want to point people? If they want to learn more about you, connect with you. Like where,
Oh,
Mark?
well, they could. My website is marklesser.net, marclesser.net, and the book is available. Any place books are sold these days. Some people love Amazon, some people hate Amazon, but books,
But the book is there,
the book is
regardless of
the
whether
book
you
is
like
the
it or
book
you
is there, and as well as other online and offline booksellers.
Perfect. So Marc Lesser, MarcLesser.net. Everybody, make sure you go there and check it out and get your copy of Finding Clarity. Before you and I say goodbye, Mark, I have a question that I want to ask everybody. I ask you all this question every week. Now what? What action are you going to take as a result? Maybe if you took as many notes as I did, it won't be hard. The only thing that will be hard here is picking what you're going to do first. I love this idea of thinking about being spacious in the moment of feeling busy.
Mhm,
We certainly talked about this idea of the no fester rule. I love that. We talked about a lot of things. We talked about the value of little things. We talked a lot about change.
mhm,
And so what do you need to do? What will you do in any of those areas, or whatever else that you specifically thought of that
yeah,
connected for you? The only thing that matters, everybody, is that you take action from this. If you don't take action, kind of what's the point, right? Any
yeah.
final thoughts, Mark,
Yeah,
before we go?
I want to highlight where we started actually, which we didn't maybe address it as directly as I'm about to, but it's don't avoid conflict, right? In a way, the how are you doing conversation is a way of um, becoming friendlier with the discomfort of lack of alignment, and seeing that discomfort as an opportunity to become more aligned, and build more trust, and yeah, build more trusting relationships by not avoiding difficulties and conflict. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep uh, that's been a real big aha for me, because my natural tendency is to avoid. I'm a born conflict avoider, and And the only times I've ever gotten into trouble in the business world was by avoiding
Wording.
those difficult conversations.
Yeah, if we're asking your favorite forward question, how we're doing, and we do it frequently,
Yeah.
it will be easier for us. I mean, yes, we have to embrace the fact that there may be conflict, but if we do it frequently, it's far less painful
Yes.
because we're not waiting so long for that, uh,
Yes.
molehill to become a mountain, if you
Yeah.
will.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
Mark, thank you so much for being
Thank
here. Such a
thank you.
pleasure to have you. Such a pleasure to have the chance to spend time with your book and now to spend time with you. And I hope all of you feel the same way, that whether you watched us with us live or watched us or listened to us on the podcast, either way, hope that you enjoyed it. Hope you'll, if you're listening on the podcast, refer us or connect to us or subscribe to us or follow us, whatever is appropriate for whatever platform you happen to be on. I hope you'll do those things. And I hope you'll be back next week for another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. Thanks, everyone.